Tonight's story begins in a classroom that never moves past 2:52 p.m. The clocks are frozen, the birds outside hang in midair, and the teacher smiles like nothing's wrong. He says they're not alive, not dead, just paused. But when one student finally makes time move again, they realize the worst thing about breaking the loop is what's waiting for them at 2:53. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. Out Teacher trapped our class in a never-ending time loop. It's always 2:52 p.m. Stop! I really needed the bathroom. For 50 painstaking minutes, I had been staring at the clock on the wall, willing it to go faster, uncomfortably shifting side to side in my seat, so much that I was starting to get weird looks. 2:52 p.m. 8 minutes, I thought dizzily, squeezing my legs together, which was just 2 chunks of 4 minutes, 4 chunks of 2 minutes. The pain started like normal stomach pain, the kind I could deal with. I swallowed 2 painkillers with lukewarm soda, but this was different. This kind of pain was contorting and twisting my gut so much, I had to keep leaning onto my left buttock for relief. I must have done it so many times, I caught the attention of the guy sitting next to me. Roman Hemlock, who was half asleep, dark blonde curls hanging in half-lidded eyes, his chin leaning on his fist. He shot me a look. I couldn't tell if it was, "Are you okay?" or, "Can you stop moving around so much?" From the single crease in his brow, the slight curl in his lip, I guessed the latter. It's not like Roman was helping. For half the class, he'd been tapping his foot on the floor, then his chair leg, and to complete the orchestra, his fingers joined in, tap, tap, tapping on the edge of his desk. I didn't know if it was a bored thing, an ADHD thing, or he was trying to keep himself awake. It was easy to tolerate without the pain, but with it, the boy's incessant tapping was more akin to a dentist drill splitting my skull open. I already felt nauseous. The sad-looking chicken nuggets I forced down at lunch, making an unwelcome appearance at the back of my throat. It was too fucking hot, the stuffy summer air gluing my hair to the back of my neck. The material of my shirt was making me cringe, sticky against my skin. Tipping my head back, the lights were too bright. Every sound was too loud. Imogen Prairie, who was sitting behind me, chewing her gum a little too loudly. Kaz Samuels scribbling notes like a maniac. I could hear every stroke of his pencil, every time he paused, looked up at the presentation, and continued writing. When I leaned forward in my chair, I could smell exactly what Isabella Trinity had eaten for lunch, the stink hanging in the air. It became a case of sucking in my stomach and taking slow, deep breaths. I'd never had these kinds of stomach cramps before, but it didn't take me long to figure out what they were. I was yet to start my period at the grand age of 16, which meant this was it. After countless sessions with the doctor and feeling like a social outcast among my group of friends who started their periods in middle school, it had finally happened. The cramps in my gut that felt like my torso was being ripped apart was in fact me entering womanhood. When my breath started to quicken, my mouth watering, I raised my hand, biting my lip against a cry. Fuck. Something lurched in my gut, a wave of nausea crashing into me. I was going to throw up. Mr. Brighton. Roman spoke up before me, waving his arm. "Can I use the bathroom?" The teacher's answer was always the same, which was why I had been crossing my legs for the entirety of the class, unable to focus on anything but my gut, trying to twist itself inside out. Mr. Brighton leaned against the wall, his eyes glued to the PowerPoint awash in our faces. We had been staring at the exact same slide for maybe 5 minutes now, and our physics teacher was yet to speak, his gaze somewhere else. Mr. Brighton was my dad's age, a graying man in his early 50s who always wore the exact same suit with the exact same stain on his collar. The man was about as interesting as watching paint dry. Normally, I would drift off myself, lulled into slumber by the low drone of his voice, but the pain ripping me apart was keeping me awake. "Mr. Brighton," Roman said, louder. His voice snapped me out of it. "Can I use the bathroom?" He paused, exaggerating a loud sigh. "Please?" The teacher straightened up, folding his arms. "Mr. Hemlock, you know the rules. Why didn't you go before class?" "I didn't need to go an hour ago, did I?" "You will no longer need to go to the bathroom, Mr. Hemlock." Roman made a snorting noise. "What?" The low murmur of my classmates collapsed into white noise. Glancing at the clock, I was anticipating the school bell. The sickness swimming in the pit of my belly was reaching dangerous territory. 2:52 p.m. Something ice cold trickled down my spine. It was 2:52 the last time I checked, and 5 minutes had surely passed. This time, I waited a whole minute and counted the seconds under my breath. The clock still didn't move. The ticker was frozen halfway between 3 and 4. Slowly, the same realization began to hit the 12 of us. The clock on the wall had stopped, but it wasn't the only thing that had stopped. The cool breeze drifting through the window was gone, the sound of birds outside, and the cheer squad practicing their routine. Everything had stopped. Trying to ignore a sickly slither of panic twisting its way through me, I checked my phone under my desk. There was a text from my mom lighting up my notifications. When I tried to swipe it open, nothing happened. My lock screen was frozen, stuck at 2:52 p.m. With my hands growing clammy around my phone, I stared, at the time, willing it to move, to flick to 2:53. But nothing happened, the numbers stubbornly staying at 2:52. "What the fuck are you talking about?" Roman's voice brought me back to reality, though I was sure I'd dropped my phone. I heard it hit the floor with a sickening crack. Whatever he was saying, though, faded into dull murmur. When I turned toward the window, something was wrong outside. The cheer squad were nowhere to be seen. Being on the top floor gave us a front row seat to their practice sessions. I stopped watching when their flyer did a death-defying flip, almost breaking her neck. 2:52 p.m. I couldn't see the cheer squad, but I did see Jessie Carson mid-sprint across the track field, strawberry blonde curls suspended in a halo around her. I could see exactly where she had frozen in place, her left foot hovering off of the ground, her right foot driving momentum. It wasn't just Jessie who had stopped. The dirt she was kicking into a cloud behind her was hovering, caught in midair. Studying the faces around me, my mouth went dry. Roman Hemlock, mid-argument with our physics teacher. His eyes were wide, lips curved into what would have been a yell. Fuck, was I the only one? But then Roman blinked, and I realized the boy wasn't frozen. He was trying to think of a comeback. "What do you mean I won't need the bathroom anymore?" "Mr. Hemlock, please lower your voice." "Why? You can't dictate to me when I do and don't need the bathroom, dude." Moving on to the rest of my class, the others were still moving. It was too quiet, though. Yes, Roman was still tapping his foot. Imogen was still chewing her gum. Kaz was still scribbling notes like a psychopath, but they were the only noise I could hear. I wasn't the only one confused. The classroom had pricked with a sense of urgency. Kids were checking their phones, their gazes glued to the clock. Even Roman, who was still arguing, was starting to notice. I watched his gaze lazily roll to the place. Clock on the wall. I pretended not to see his cheeks visibly paling. We had all come to the exact same terrifying conclusion. 2:52 p.m. Time had come to a halt, and somehow we had not. "Is that clock broken?" Roman interrupted, leaning forward in his chair. Kaz twisted around, settling the boy with an eye roll. "Check your phone, dumbass." "I broke my phone." Imogen threw her iPhone at him, narrowly missing, hitting him in the face. "Everything is frozen," she said, her voice shuddering. "It's not just the clock." I waited for Roman's response. For once, though, he was speechless. "Well done, Imogen. That is correct." Mr. Brighton spoke up, tearing a piece of paper from a workbook and striding over to the door, gluing it over the glass window. When we started to protest, some of us were shouting, while others bursting into tears. He calmly took out his key and locked us in. I should have been surprised that our teacher had spontaneously decided to take his entire class hostage, but the rumor mill had been churning. According to Becca Jason, the guy's wife divorced him and took his kids. I could feel myself sinking into my chair, phantom bugs filling my mouth. So, this guy had nothing to lose. Taking his place in front of his desk, the man settled us with a patient smile. "From now on, you will stay inside this room," he said. "In case you haven't noticed, time is currently frozen at 52 minutes past 2. The 13 of us are tucked into the 21st second, and will be for the foreseeable future." I could tell the others wanted to argue, but we couldn't deny that time had stopped. Kaz was staring down at his frozen phone, Imogen hyperventilating behind me, Roman glaring at the clock, chewing on a pencil. We wanted it to be a prank, a joke, some kind of glitch in the matrix that would fix itself. But then a whole minute passed by, followed by another. Kaz threw his phone on the floor, hissing in frustration. Imogen let out a wet-sounding sob. Roman's pencil split in his mouth, slipping from his fingers. We couldn't pretend it wasn't happening or call our teacher out on his BS because it was everywhere around us. The sudden absence of outdoor ambience, birdsong, planes flying overhead, and traffic outside the school gates. Everyone and everything had stopped, and we were the only ones left. This was a nightmare, surely. My physics class were some of the most boring and pretentious people in the school, and somehow the world had been reduced to the 12 of us inside our classroom. We were scared, of course we were, but reality had stopped making sense, crashing and burning in a single second. We had no choice but to listen to our teacher. Now, before you freak out, it may not feel like it, but the 12 of you have also stopped. Mr. Brighton held out his own hand and placed it on his heart. He was right. I was so busy trying to understand what was happening, I had failed to realize my fant. Period cramps were gone. "Do me a favor and press your hand over your heart." "You mean like, in a culty way?" Imogen whispered. "Obviously," Roman grumbled, halfway out of his seat. He was hesitant, though, in case our teacher was armed. It only took one glance from our teacher, and he slumped back into his chair. "This crazy fucker clearly wants to play mind games with us." "No, I'm just asking you to feel for your heart." I felt for mine, and there was nothing. My stomach twisting. Roman stabbed his fingers into his neck, feeling for a pulse. He tried his wrist, then his heart. Nothing. "The 12 of you are currently in a state of stasis," the teacher explained to us. "You are not alive, nor are you dead. Your bodily functions are also on pause, such as your heartbeat and your pulse. In this state, there will be no need for food and water, or going to the bathroom." His gaze found a ghastly-looking Roman, who looked like he was going to faint. "Your minds, however, as you can see, are working as usual." "But why?" Imogen demanded in a shriek. Mr. Brighton's lip curled. "I would rather not answer that question." "Because you're lonely," Roman spoke up. He swung back on his chair, narrowed eyes glued to the teacher. "Your wife and kids left you, so you're asserting power over a group of 16-year-olds, which is kinda fucking pathetic." Mr. Brighton's expression darkened, and something slimy crept up my throat. The worst thing any of us could do was threaten him. He had taken kidnapping to a whole new level, and we were alone with this psychopath, trapped inside a second. I waited for the man to stride forward and attack the kid, but he didn't. Instead, the teacher leaned back on his desk. "Yes." The man nodded. "I suppose you could say I am." "But why us?" Kaz hissed. "Because you are children," Mr. Brighton responded casually. He straightened up, taking slow, intimidating steps towards Roman's desk. The rest of us leaned back. I tried to pull my desk with me, but it was glued to the floor, frozen. Mr. Brighton's shoes went click-clack across the hardwood floor. "You are right," the man said in a murmur. "I am lonely. My wife and kids did leave me, and I have nobody left to control. I have nobody else to contort and use to my advantage." Reaching Roman's desk, he leaned in close until he was nose to nose with the kid. "Congratulations, Mr. Hemlock. You have just earned yourself detention." Roman stayed stubbornly still, but he was visibly afraid. I could see him very slowly backing away. Roman was all bark and no bite. He was a loud mouth, sure, but he was also the least confrontational person in the class. "What?" he spluttered. "You trap us in a time loop or time trap or whatever, and you still want to act like a teacher? Stand up," the teacher ordered. "What if I don't?" Mr. Brighton's expression didn't waver. "You said it, in yourself. I can and have trapped you inside a single second. What else do you think I'm capable of?" Roman stood, kicking his chair out of the way. "What are you planning on doing to me, old man?" The teacher maintained his smile. "Stand up straight and close your mouth." To my confusion, Roman Hemlock did all the above. He straightened up and closed his mouth. "Do not fight me," the teacher said calmly. "Do as you are told and follow me." The boy did exactly as instructed. His jaw slackened, that rebellious light in his eyes fizzling out. I think that's when we all collectively agreed that going against this teacher and trying to escape was bad. "I will use Mr. Hemlock as an example to all of you," Mr. Brighton said, turning to the rest of us. "If you break the rules or are derogatory in any way, you will be given detention." He grabbed the boy's shoulders, forcing him to walk towards the supply closet. Roman moved like a robot, slightly off balance, his gaze glued to thin air, like he was tracking invisible butterflies. "Your time in detention will depend on the severity of your rule break." He opened the door, gently pushing Roman inside and following suit. When the door closed behind them, there was a pause, and I remembered how to breathe. Kaz Samuel slowly got up from his desk, inching towards the closet. "This guy is a certified nut," he announced. He turned towards us. "Whatever he's doing to Hemlock, we're probably next." He stopped time. I spoke up, my own voice barely a croak. "He's capable of anything. But how did he stop time?" Kaz whistled, tipping his head back. The boy was slow, his fingers grasping each desk as he slid down the aisle. "He said he was lonely, right? But why take it out on us? What did we do to him?" "Check his desk for a weapon," Imogen Whisper shrieked. Kaz nodded, striding over to the man's desk, his hands moving frantically, shoving paper on the floor. He took an uncertain seat on the man's chair. "There's nothing here," he murmured, lifting stained coffee mugs and ancient textbooks. "It's just test papers." Kaz ducked from view, trying the drawers. "He's a fan of Pokemon," he said. "There's a ton of Pokemon cards." Kaz straightened up, running a hand through his hair. "No sign of a weapon, though." He picked up a ruler, waving it around. "This could work, if we plunge it in his eye." "Try his laptop!" Imogen was halfway out of her seat. Kaz did, slamming the keys. "It's locked." "Look harder!" Ren Clark threw a pencil at him. "I am." After a minute of searching, Kaz grabbed a single piece of paper. He held it up, and I squinted. It was a list of our names, with several of them highlighted. Fuck. Kaz dropped the list, his expression crumpling. The stubborn bravado facade transforming him into our sort of leader dissipated, hollowing him out into exactly what he was. Just a scared kid. Kaz's hands were shaking. "Mr. Brighton's got a hit list," he whispered. "He's going to kill us." "How do you know that?" I found myself asking. Kaz slowly dropped into a crouch, picking up the paper and holding it up. "Look," he pointed to a capitalized name at the top of the list highlighted in red. "Roman Hemlock." There were 6 names highlighted in red, including mine. Krista Adams. As if on cue, Roman's cry rang out from the supply closet, suddenly freezing us all in place. Kaz jumped up, adapting the expression of a deer caught in headlights, eyes wide, almost unseeing. He fell over himself to tidy up the desk, putting everything back where he had found it, sliding the list between a pile of test papers. Kaz took slow, stumbled steps back, his feverish gaze glued to the closet, before turning and making a break for it and diving into his seat. "Brighton's got a hit list," Kaz said, in a mocking sing-song, and we're all on it. What followed was deathly silence. I think we were expecting Roman to cry out again, but when he didn't, the class started to stir. Some kids started praying to a god they didn't believe in, while others were in varying states of denial, trying to call their parents with dead phones. I wasn't sure what parts of me had stopped, but I was still alive, still felt like my lungs were deprived of oxygen, my chest aching. I'm not sure how long I sat there, trying to find my voice, a shriek trying and failing to rip through my mouth. Being kidnapped and held hostage is one thing, but being imprisoned inside a single, never-ending second was an existential hell worse than death. Slowly, I pressed my palm over my heart once again. Then I breathed into my cupped hands. I was expecting it, but no longer being able to feel my own heartbeat and breath was fear I didn't think was possible. The kind that glued me to my seat, hollowing me out completely until I was nothing, an empty shell with no heartbeat, no breath, no thoughts, except denial, followed by acceptance, and finally, regret. I regretted not hugging my mother goodbye before I left for school. I regretted acting like a spoiled brat when my parents refused to drive me halfway across the country so I could attend Coachella. I regretted stepping inside Mr. Brighton's fourth period physics class. Mr. Brighton reappeared, slamming the door behind him and locking the boy inside. Part of me flinched, while the rest of me remembered not to move a muscle. I was barely aware of time passing. Or it wasn't. Time had stopped. So now long had I been sitting there, I could no longer measure the passage of time with hunger or thirst, and my body felt the same. I wasn't stiff, or tired, or achy. Looking out of the window, the sky was the exact same crystal blue. Every cloud in the exact same place. Jessie Carson was still frozen mid-run, strands of dark red hair caught around her. "What's wrong with you guys?" Mr. Brighton chuckled, and I twisted back to the front, a shiver writhing down my spine. "Why don't you give me a smile?" The teacher returned to his desk, and I was already subconsciously sitting up straight in my seat, forcing my lips into a jaw-breaking grin, following Brighton's instructions. In the corner of my eye, Imogen was sitting very still, forcing an award-winning cheesy smile, while Kaz grinned through gritted teeth. "Mr. Hemlock just earned himself 2 weeks inside the supply closet," he said casually, perching himself on the edge of his desk. The man studied each of us, taking his time to rip every shred of us apart. Mind, body, and soul. I struggled to maintain my stupid smile, shoving my shaking hands in my lap. "Would anyone like to join him, or are you going to follow the rules?" The rest of us stayed silent. I don't think any of us breathed. Our teacher nodded to Kaz, inclining his head. "Samuels, are you all right?" Kaz's smile faltered slightly. He shifted in his chair. I could see sweat trickling down his right temple. Yeah." He swiped at his forehead, like he couldn't believe he was sweating. "Yeah, I'm good." The teacher's eyes narrowed. He moved toward his desk, and we all held our breaths. Mr. Brighton seemed to study his hit list, lips curving into a frown. His gaze flicked to the boy, and then the paper. He knew, I thought dizzily. Mr. Brighton knew the kid had been rummaging through his desk, but this was all about control. The teacher was using fear to control us, to manipulate our thoughts without having to get physical. He could have called out the boy right then, but Brighton was settling with mental torture instead. He just wanted to make my classmates squirm. Without a word, the man folded up the piece of paper and slipped it into his pocket. "Mr. Samuels, you are sweating," our physics teacher said, mocking a frown. "Are you feeling okay?" Kaz hesitated, tapping his shoe in a rhythm. Being one of the smartest kids in the room definitely gave him an advantage. I could already see the cogs turning behind half-lidded eyes. Kaz was weighing each scenario, sorting them into positives and negatives. The positives of answering would mean he was one step towards being in the clear, but there were 2 negatives. Brighton would question him if he had left his seat, and then demand how his hit list had magically moved across the desk. Talking back was surely a rule break, as well as outright lying. Opening his mouth would get him in trouble, either way, and Kaz knew that. So, he just nodded, forcing an even bigger smile. Brighton's lips pricked, his gaze straying on Kaz. Good. He cleared his throat, turning to the class. Kaz slumped in his seat with a sharp breath, resting his head in his arms. If Mr. Brighton noticed, he didn't say anything. Ignore the sweating. It should stop, along with hunger and thirst. Our teacher seemed to be able to manipulate everything in his vicinity. Time, minds, and slowly contorting us into his own. In the single second we were trapped inside, I felt days go by in a dizzying whirlwind that was like being permanently high. When I stood up, I felt like I was floating. When I sat down, hours could go by, even days, and I wouldn't even feel them. I did try and count the days, initially, scribbling them on a scrap piece of paper, but somewhere around the 13th or 14th day, I lost count. The world around us never changed, in permanent stasis, and maybe that was sending us a little crazy. After a while of being stuck at our desks, Mr. Brighton allowed us to wander the classroom, as long as we stayed away from the door. I lay on the floor for days, counting ceiling tiles. Sometimes, Imogen would join me. I couldn't sleep, but I could pretend to sleep, imagining a world that was back to normal. I didn't feel hungry, but my brain did like to remind me of food at the weirdest times. I was aware of weeks passing us by, and then months. I never grew hungry or tired, and my bodily functions were non-existent. I couldn't remember what pain felt like, or the urge to go to the bathroom. Even the concept of eating and drinking became foreign to me. Putting something in your mouth and chewing to sustain yourself? That sounded odd. The only thing that was changing was our slowly unraveling mental state. I don't know how it started. Weekends and Tuesdays blended together. On one particular Saturday Tuesday, I was hanging upside down from my desk, watching Kaz and Imogen doodle on the whiteboard. Kaz had a plan to escape, but after a while, his plan to distract the teacher had gone nowhere. After passing notes between us, the 12 of us had decided that we needed a weapon. That was maybe a month ago. I wasn't sure what mind games our teacher was playing, but Kaz Samuels, who we were counting on to be our brains, was slowly falling under his spell. Their game had been going on for 3 days. The two of them were having a pet competition to see who could draw the craziest thing. Mr. Brighton was at his desk as usual, marking papers. Imogen was drawing a weird-looking skateboard when the doors to the storage closet flew open. Roman Hemlock appeared, and to my surprise, wasn't a hollow-eyed shell. He held up his hand in a wave, his lips forming a small smile. Yo! Roman's reappearance was enough to snap us out of it. Kaz and Imogen stopped arguing, the rest of the class going silent. I sat up, blinking rapidly. I was sure our collective consensus was that Roman Hemlock was dead. Mr. Brighton lifted his head and gave the boy a civil nod. Mr. Hemlock will be rejoining us, he said, his gaze going back to marking papers. Please make him feel comfortable. I'm sure he's very excited to be able to talk to you again. Instead of going to his desk, the boy immediately joined the others, snatching the marker off of a baffled-looking Kaz and drawing an overly artistic sketch of a penis. I wasn't sure what confused me more. The fact that Roman Hemlock had some serious artistic skills, or that he seemed suspiciously fine for someone who had been locked in the storage closet for 2 weeks with no social interaction. With my last few lingering brain cells still clinging on, I studied the boy. There were no signs of bruises or scratches. His eyes seemed normal, not diluted or half-lidded. Unable to stop myself, I jumped off of my desk and joined the others, where Kaz was already interrogating the guy. What? Imogen nudged him, and he lowered his voice, leaning against the wall. What did he do to you? Roman shrugged, rolling his eyes. Relax, dude. He didn't do anything to me. Then what was that yell? Imogen hissed. The boy cocked his head. Yell? You yelled out? Kaz folded his arms, narrowing his eyes. He was already suspecting one of us had been compromised, or worse, brainwashed into compliance. Kaz stepped closer, backing Roman into the set. Desk. "You cried out when you first went in there," he murmured. "So, what was that?" Something in Roman's eyes darkened. "Oh," he said, his lip curling. "That." Kaz's expression softened. He rested his hands on the boy's shoulders. "Yeah," he whispered. "What did he do to you?" Imogen shoved Kaz out of the way, shooting the boy a glare. "You don't have to tell us, you know," she said in a small voice. "If it's too traumatizing, or he did something you don't want to talk about." Roman cut her off with a laugh, and suddenly, all eyes were on him. The remaining 9 of us were eagerly awaiting an explanation. "Are you fucking serious?" When Kaz didn't respond, Roman gathered us in a kind of hustle. The 4 of us grouped together. I felt like I was on the football field. Still though, if the guy's goal was to look as suspicious as possible, he was doing a great job. Roman studied each of us, one eyebrow cocked. When Mr. Brighton glanced up from his work, Roman shot him a grin, lowering his voice to a hiss. "You seriously think our 50-year-old physics teacher has been abusing me in the storage closet? Then why did you cry out?" Kaz demanded. "Did he hit you?" Roman stuck out his bottom lip. "I'm pretty sure he didn't hit me." "So, you cried out for no reason. Why are you covering for him?" Imogen poked his forehead. "Are you lobotomized?" Roman wafted her hand away. "Stop prodding me, and no, I'm 100% good." He backed away from us, like we were observers, and he was the zoo attraction. "I won't be, if you keep treating me like I'm senile." "Okay, fine," Kaz sighed. "Just answer one. Shoot. When you first went in there, you made an unmistakable sound of distress." "Not this again," Roman groaned. "Of course I yelled. I was shoved into a pitch-black storage closet on my own." "What? Did you expect me to stay silent?" Kaz didn't look convinced. Imogen, nervously sucking her teeth. The boy leaned back, resting his head against the wall. His eyes flickered shut. "Stop looking at me like that. There's nothing to tell you," he murmured. "Brighton didn't do shit to me. I was just freaked out." Prying one eye open, he fixed us with a glare. "I am so sorry for reacting like a human. Next time, I'll make sure to attack him and pin him to the ground." It's not like we believed him. I don't think Roman believed himself. Something significant had changed in him. He was no longer argumentative, like half of his personality had been torn away. Roman set a precedent. Because once he was following instructions and walking around with a dazed smile, others began to follow. I can't remember how much time had passed since I thought about escaping. Days and weeks and months had collapsed into fleeting seconds. I only noticed when I wasn't playing games. I wasn't aware of my own lack of sanity until I found myself on a random Saturday Wednesday. I was laughing, gathered with the others on the floor, around a Monopoly board. The game had been going on for almost a week. Reality hit me when I was laughing so hard I tipped back. I can't remember why I was laughing. I think Imogen told a bad joke. "Hand it over." Roman, who was the king of Monopoly, held out his hand, demanding my last $250. I remember noticing his smile, my foggy brain trying to find hints that he was in some kind of trance or being controlled by Brighton. But no, his smile was real, genuine. To my shock and confusion, so was mine. I wasn't in a trance or any type of mind manipulation. I was completely conscious. Was this Stockholm Syndrome? I thought dizzily. Was I enjoying this? My thoughts were like cotton candy, disconnected and wrong, and they barely felt like my own. My gaze found Imogen and Kaz, the two of them sitting shoulder to shoulder, enveloped in the game. They looked exactly the same, their hair, clothes, everything about them staying stagnant. It was them themselves who had drastically changed. I had never seen them look so carefree. Imogen was a hot-headed cheerleader, and Kaz was the smart kid who gave himself nosebleeds from overworking himself. But now, they were laughing, nudging each other, caught up in an inside joke. Blinking slowly, my gaze strayed on them. Sure, it could be manipulation. It could be brainwashing. but it could also be real. Kaz caught my eye, raising a brow. "You good, Krista?" Again, my smile felt real, like I was having fun. "Good, it's your turn." I picked up the dice, throwing them across the board. 2 6s. "I can already see her landing on one of my hotels," Roman murmured. He sat up, resting his chin on his knees. "As the clear winner, I have a proposition." Ignoring him, I moved my piece, immediately landing on Park Place. "I'll give you 500, Roman announced, "if you give up New York Avenue." "That's all I've got," Imogen nudged, all me. "Don't do it. If you give him New York Avenue, he only needs one more." 1,000, Roman waved the notes in my face. "My final offer." When I reached for the cash, he held it back. "New York Avenue," he said, with a grin. "And your pride." Reluctantly, I handed my only property over. Kaz threw the dice and moved his piece, and I half remembered we had an escape plan. "Community chest." Kaz picked up a card. "Go straight to jail," *, Roman spluttered. "That's karma," he said, "for stealing from the bank. You were stealing too. We had a plan. We had a plan." After discussing it in detail, Imogen and I were going to try and get onto Brighton's laptop. It wasn't a perfect way to escape, but it was coherent. So, what happened? We were going to get out, so what? What was this? Kaz's earlier words hit me from months ago. "Mr. Brighton is the thing keeping us here," he explained. "If we kill him, I'm like 98% sure we'll go back to normal." "Okay, and what if he dies and we're stuck?" Imogen Whisper shrieked. "I said 98% for a reason. Yes, there's a small chance his power will die with him, but there's a bigger chance that its effects will die when he does." Ren nodded slowly. "Right. And where exactly did you learn this information?" "You'll feel a lot better if I don't answer that." "Okay." Ren gritted his teeth. "So, we just need to find a weapon, right? And don't tell Hemlock." Kaz rolled his eyes. "I don't care what he says. That boy definitely had his mind fucked with. Hemlock is a liability. If we tell Roman, he tells Brighton, and we're screwed." Kaz nodded to me, then the others. "Keep your mouths shut." Presently, I wasn't sure the boy wanted to escape. Slowly, I rolled my eyes over to Mr. Brighton, who had joined us to play. He was happily marking papers, taking part when he could. It felt right. Not like we had been forced or manipulated, but more like he belonged. Part of me wanted to question why I felt like this, but I found that I didn't care. I didn't care that we were essentially dead, in a never-ending stasis, and stuck inside 52 minutes past 2. I stopped thinking about the outside world a long time ago. I couldn't even remember my mom's face. I made my decision, dazedly watching Imogen throw a chance card at Roman. He flung one back, threatening to tip the board. I wanted to stay. In the corner of my eye, however, someone was still awake. Ren, who had been sitting next to me, kept moving further and further away. I didn't notice until he was inching towards our teacher. A box cutter clenched between his fist. There must have been a point when we found a box cutter, when we made it our weapon of choice. But somewhere along the way, I think we just lost the longing to want to escape. I didn't see the exact moment the boy stabbed the blade into the man's neck, plunging it through his flesh, but I did feel a sudden jolt, like time itself was starting to falter and tremble. Mr. Brighton dropped to the ground, and I found my gaze flashing to the frozen clock, which was moving, suddenly, slowly creeping towards 2:53 p.m. Something sticky ran underneath me, warm and wet. Blood that was running. Roman's half-lidded eyes found mine, and he blinked, dropping the dice. Like he'd been asleep for a long time. 2:53 p.m. We were free. The cool spring breeze grazing my cheeks was back. I could feel my own heartbeat, sticky sweat on my forehead. And outside, Jesse Carson let out a gut-churning scream. More screams rang out, down the hallways, getting closer and closer. For a disorienting moment, I don't think any of us believed we were free. Roman twisted around, his gaze on the doorway. The piece of paper the teacher had stuck to the glass slipped away, but Roman's gaze was glued to the door, his cheeks paling, his lips parted into a silent cry. Following his eyes, I glimpsed a shadow that was frozen at 2:52 p.m., 2:53 p.m. "Fuck," Roman whispered, stumbling to his feet. He turned to the rest of us, his eyes wild. "Get down!" I dropped onto my knees, crawling under a desk, the classroom exploding around me. 2:54. Blood splattered the walls, and I was crawling in it, stained in my friends. 2:55. I grabbed Mr. Brighton's hand, squeezing for dear life. Roman joined me, his trembling fingers feeling for a pulse. A gunshot rang in my ears, rattling my skull. When Roman went limp next to me, I wrapped my arms around my teacher. "Mr. Brighton, say stop," I whispered when Imogen's screams stopped. He was so cold. "Mr. Brighton, take us back." Footsteps coming towards me, ice-cold steel protruding into my neck. 2:56. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.